Good morning, everybody. I'm Kat Fantin. Welcome to my channel. In this video, I'm going to talk to you guys about my DIY wood countertop project that I did to go along with my DIY gallery wall in my dining room / office area. But before we get started, I'm just making my breakfast really quick. I make myself a hot breakfast every morning. It's something that as a busy work-at-home mom, I feel the need to do for myself. It's a little bit of self-care, and having a little bit of veggies and protein and deliciousness to start my morning just helps me stay focused throughout the day. I think this is something that all moms should be doing. Don't just eat a granola bar and let your sugar crash later. Feed yourself a good breakfast, some good fuel for your day. I promise it will make the day go so much easier. So the reason for this countertop project, I'm not sure what the previous owners in our house did to this little countertop. I think they might have tried to put tile over the existing laminate, and then they ripped that tile up. It's hard to tell what they did, but it was extremely damaged. So as I was redoing my dining room / office space, I decided to go ahead and do something about the ugly countertop. This project out of pocket cost me about $16. I already had some of the materials and tools needed on hand, so if you don't already have those things, it might cost you a little bit more. So I went to Home Depot and looked at the wood. I got the basic pine wood. I got 2x8 instead of 1x8 because they are a little bit thicker. They're not actually 2 inches thick, which is something I learned. But it's about the same thickness as a countertop, maybe a little thinner, but you know, it's more comparable to a countertop than a 1x8 would have been, for example. So when I got my boards home, I picked the best side of both boards and laid them next to each other to see how I wanted them to be arranged. Then I had my husband cut them to size with the table saw. After we had the boards cut to size and laid out how I wanted them to be, I used a small palm sander, which is what I had on hand. I sanded the boards individually before they were attached together so that all the edges would be nice and smooth and that they'd be going together smoothly. I started with a lower grit and slowly worked my way up. My husband is a machine repair journeyman, so he knows how to do pretty much everything in terms of metal working and fabricating. So he actually took a couple pieces of flat metal, I don't even know what kind of metal it was, and he drilled some holes in them, and then he used those as a flat bracket to hold the boards together on the bottom side of the countertop. Once the boards were fastened together, I went to town on the sanding. I started with a lower grit, like I said earlier. I don't remember the exact numbers. It was probably 40 or 60 grit. I sanded the entire surface, and I really worked on the edges and the corners to make them nice and smooth. I didn't want any pointy corners or edges. And then I just continually stepped up the grit on the sandpaper. Probably did 80 and then like 120 grit, and then the last step was a super fine grit, so like 200 grit of some sort. I don't know, whatever we had on hand. After all the sanding was done and I was happy with the smoothness of the boards themselves and the corners and edges, I did 2 coats of stain. And staining is like the easiest thing you could ever do to wood. It's easier even than painting, in my opinion. You take some stain and put it on a stain sponge. You can use a rag, or you can even use paintbrushes, whatever your preferred method of staining is. I like the stain sponges just because they're super easy to work with. But definitely, if you go that route, wear gloves because stain will get on your hands. You have been warned. I did 2 coats of stain because after the first coat I was pretty happy with the color, but I wanted it to be more uniform. With only 1 coat you could still really see the grain on the wood, and I like being able to see the grain on the wood, but not as much as it was after just the first coat. So I did the second coat and it was perfect after that. I let that dry, and then I did 3 coats of polyurethane, or is it polyacrylic? I don't know, some sort of clear coat that's meant to go over stain. I forget which one I used. It was one of those 2 things though. And then between the coats of your clear coat, of your poly, you want to sand with a fine grit between coats. So that last grit that I used, the 200 something grit sandpaper, that's what I used to go over and sand between the coats of poly. After your last coat of poly, do not sand. That's the one where you're done. You don't do anything else. When I was finally done with the countertop itself, we had to tear out the old countertop. Our home is an old manufactured home, so things are done differently in these types of houses than they would be done in traditional stick-built houses. So I wasn't really sure how the countertop was fastened to the wall. I was going to look for screws or nails or something to pull out. What ended up happening is my husband just went in and with his strength, he just tore it out. I think he used a hammer or a mallet or something to kind of hit the bottom up a little bit, and then he just lifted it out. He is a beast. After the old countertop is gone, we were able to put the new countertop in place. We fastened it to the wall with brackets, so like an L bracket, I'm pretty sure, and that worked beautifully. We didn't have to do anything else. So now that the countertop is fastened and in place, it looks beautiful, and I think this improvement was definitely worth the 16 bucks and some change and a little bit of time. And like I said, anybody can do this. You don't have to be a professional woodworker. If you just need a placeholder for a small countertop in your house, or even a shelf or a table, you can't really go wrong. Any mistakes that you make can be fixed, and you don't have a lot of money invested into the project, so you could always just start over if you actually needed to. Don't be afraid to just wing it. So thanks for watching. Again, I'm Kat Fantin, and if you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. And go ahead and subscribe if you are a work-at-home mom like me who just likes to do simple DIY projects to make little improvements throughout the house. Thanks for watching, and I will see you later.